our task would have been over 3 months after you joined us, because there would be nothing more to stick on. In other words, if your task is what you're sending the world, you've got to have a completely different frame of mind than you used to have. The frame of mind that your teachers had, probably worse than yours. You probably think it's not so, but we know it's so. Our frame of mind is, we got to get out of here. And we so desperately wanted the task to end, and we still desperately want the task to end. But that, I'll speak with a forked tongue, because we don't want the task to end before the next level would consider we have done a good task. But let's go back to what we were saying a moment ago. If your vehicles were correctable in all of their aspects, so that those aspects never came up again, you would have no job to do. Now, the next level has seen to it by putting you back in such a primitive condition that as long as you're here, you're going to have a lot to do. You see what we're saying? Because your vehicles are not capable of becoming perfect in whatever time you're here in those areas of its weaknesses and its primitive condition. It's not capable. And they saw to it that you would get one that wasn't capable of correcting all those ways. Because your job is to send signals in all those ways. And the longer you send those signals, the more good is going to happen to the civilization. Now, this doesn't mean lay down on the job in order to have a lot of job left over. It means that as hard as you can work, as fast as you can work, there will still be enough for you to do to take us to the time that they choose that our job is over.
Well, they can take down the job, because then it'll take us longer to do what we have
That's
to do.
right.
So there's no way.
So I don't know if you all can understand that, but it helps me understand it, because we were so dumb, we were so ignorant, and like I can remember even before we met you all and realized that our job was to do what we had to do with the class, and over were just agonizing with the desire to leave and to get this thing over with. And we were ready to do any stupid thing that it took to do it, including getting ourselves bumped off and creating some sort of scene, which would have just negated the whole thing. And then when you can't remember, you not remember, you can never know how much when we realized that we had to have class, we would sit up all night saying, you mean we have to start at zero with a class and do something with the class? And we thought, this is going to take months, and to us, even a month, even a year was an eternity to us at that time. Little did we know it would take years and years. So it doesn't mean that we have lost our desire to leave and leave quickly. Nothing would make our happier. We would love for our cheeks to break, because we grin so, if we left 5 minutes from now.
Well, the thing of it is, we are building up an intensity. Each time we say it, we build up an intensity to bring this to an end. And when that does happen, that's going, every time we say it, it's going to intensify what you go through.
Now, and this is very important, because one of our major tasks is for us to keep kindling the accelerating flame.
Now, if you all can't take it, then we have to slow down. So therefore, you want to be able to take what is coming your way, but not with guilt. I mean, we don't want you to feel like you're not capable of handling it. We just don't want you to be weighed down. So far, you all seem to be handling it okay. Used to, when we were in campgrounds, and right around the solstice, everything used to break loose. Remember that? And we would try to warn you ahead of time. Now the solstice is coming up, so be on your toes, you know. And but it didn't do much good because you weren't awakened enough to know how to handle it. And of course, we weren't. We were all just in the process of awakening. But the most important thing, though, now is to understand what you're doing and to know that we're trying to move as quickly as we can. We're trying to get that big old rock pushed up against on top of that wall just far enough so it will stay, and do it as quickly as possible with all the efforts that we have. And we won't fall down on the job, and we don't feel like you all will. And the only thing you can do is do your task, and try to do it to the best of your ability. And that's all we're asking.
You know, they're supposed to consume in 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, I don't know if they'll make it.
I don't think so.
I was wondering about the communications talking about network and it is a necessary thing for the individual so that mind comes down and give that information out.
Say that again?
It evidently is a necessary thing that minds come down to a planet to give out that information.
It is a necessary?
Down the other way.
No, we said that there are certain kinds of things that the next level can send down, and there are certain things that they can't send down, that they have to come down and use the mouthpieces and do what we're doing with you and what you're doing for them. That those things couldn't be done, or at least, I don't know that they couldn't be done, but the next level has chosen to move the garden more quickly and to help it accelerate by doing both.
Well, see, it isn't as effective. If it was as effective, then everybody would be picking up on those scientific things.
Look how the world has accelerated since our minds came into this atmosphere.
It has to be down. It's more effective for some to be here. Oh, yes.
The funny thing is that what we may see, and this is just talk, there may not be any truth to it, but we may see when we leave that when we entered the atmosphere, that that's when every major phase of advanced civilization began to occur. I mean, you might go back to almost 100 years, or not quite that far, but let's say that the closer we got to coming in, then things really started happening. The telephone, the wheel, I'm talking about the automobile and things, and look how scientists say every day in the past 50 years we've done more than we've done in thousands of years. So it had to be because of the closeness to the next level. Now we're not talking about those other than us necessarily. See, we don't even know that what they're drawing upon isn't our minds being in this atmosphere. Information that we haven't brought into the consciousness of these vehicles. The amount of your minds that are not within those vehicles, our mind and your mind. Now let me say that again. The portion of our minds that have not entered the consciousness of these vehicles may be the source of the information that has caused everything to advance for the past, who knows how many years, 50, 40, 50, 60 years. We don't know that. We don't know that it's others. There may be nobody in this atmosphere other than us. It may be that a pilot and a co-pilot are sent from some distant place to to pick us up when this task is over and there's nobody else around. That's us. We don't know. It's a possibility. And I know for a fact that only a tiny portion of our minds are within the vehicle. Well, where's the rest of that mind? You know, we don't believe it's in Orion someplace or Sirius someplace or the Pleiades. It's somewhere close.
If the transit of your mind is within your vehicle, and it's the transit mind, do you think that all our minds could see it in our vehicle?
And the same, we know that very little of your mind is in your vehicle. Very little of your mind is in your vehicle.
You can
Now,
get more.
you're trying to pull in more, but there will be a lot that you won't pull in because it won't have any place. Even as long as we stay, your mind will not probably all come into that vehicle. I'm not even sure that vehicle wouldn't explode if it all came in.
I think part of the mind that you still have to come in, the mind that you can use on this path. In other words, you're using experience for this task. What you learned in the process of before you graduated to go to the next level. At least, and this can change. I feel like it may be obsolete next week, but in other words, you don't want to draw in any mind that is beyond what you used, what you knew. No, wait a minute, let me say that to you. You don't want to, where you can't or you shouldn't bring any mind into your vehicle that you grew once you were in the next level, because it would have no function here. You see what I'm saying? So therefore, what you're using now is mostly the mind that you have used in the process of becoming members of the next level.
Yes, you're bringing in the lower aspects of your next level mind. Okay.
But it
Can you
doesn't mean you
understand
won't
that?
remember, you know. But the closer you get to your next level mind, the more you will remember.
Now, we think every bit of the
Next level.
consciousness that you have is going to go back with you. And in order for you to use, to be able to apply it, you're not going to lose an ounce of this. We don't think so.
Okay, you took you and Team Bill come down here until late, and that you had to take the test. And I'm just wondering how many times did it take me to go through a planet on Earth to be able to come to the point where I can go down and I'm with the teachers.
Don't know. We don't have any way to.
What did she say?
How many times it would take for her to come down here to be able to do a task like this? We don't know. We don't know what our function is in the next level. We don't know what your function is. And we don't know what your abilities are, you know, and you really don't know until you get back. But it's a, I
It
will
would
say
depend
this.
upon what your task could be. I
Well,
mean,
to do one like this is what
no,
you
well,
do.
but I'm saying, if I understood her right, she's saying how many trips would I have to make down into an Earth-type environment in order to come to be sent to do.
Like this.
It depends upon where it is that you're sent. Let's say that you do a task like this, and you might be. Now this is just playing games, but you would be equipped maybe to do a beginner civilization type task in the early stages. You see, using the very basics conduct. You see what we're saying? Not, huh? Yeah, it's like somebody in the early stages of a civilization.
I know that the moon travels around here every 8 days.
And to teach conduct, to upgrade conduct, and to help them live a little less like just wild animals in the field.
This is a really tough task because
That's what I was thinking, because when you talk about, well, you probably want to come down so I can do this task, and I can get gracious, But if he emails me on these wires, so I'm capable of doing something.
Well,
You don't know that, Starry, because you don't know you. Because you hasn't been brought into that consciousness. Only a little portion of you has. And we don't know what Star Rhodey really knows outside of that vehicle. And it would be when we sit back in the spacecraft with all of Star Rhodey present and see what she has learned by her experience and see what she has as the total package of her ability would determine what your next task might be or whether or not you might do this. But you shouldn't even put yourself down like that. You don't even know that what you are learning, considering what you have had to deal with, you have a very primitive vehicle that has given you a very rough time. And I'm not just talking Star Rhodey, because I could say those same words to anybody sitting here or anybody else, or to myself. And I'm certainly not going to let my vehicle's ignorance judge my ability. Do you see what I'm saying? Because my vehicle's very ignorant. Even the amount of next level mind that is in is extremely ignorant.
Well, you've got to realize that there are many, many stages where members of the next level come down and do this. And I feel like this garden isn't very old. And so consequently, it's very difficult at this stage to accomplish what we need to accomplish. When Jesus was here, he didn't need as many individuals to work at that level. You see, and so now we need 3 times the amount. Even more than that, really, but that's all we have right now. And we seem to be accomplishing what we need to accomplish. Now, the next time somebody comes down, it may be very minor. It may not take as much effort to accomplish something like that.
If the germination of this one really...
Right. If it works, if it does like they think it will work. And if that's the case, then maybe 1 or 2 people need to come back. But they don't have to send an extremely strong person. Like when Jesus was here, he was a strong person, but he also had a member of the next level in close proximity to him. But even still, that member of the next level wasn't down there going through what Jesus was going through. You see the difference? So, but it still is, there are periods when it may not be quite as tough. Might not be as hard to deal with all of the things that, the corruption and all the things that are happening in this garden at this time. So you can't get discouraged by thinking, I'll never be able to do this, because you might be the first person who's picked to do it next time, and then you can look back and say, why did I worry about all that? When I was so naive, I didn't know better. But in other words, think that, just know who you are. Realize that you have a far superior mind than anybody on this garden. And you have a task to do, and you have the ability to do it, even though you might fall once in a while. But then it's a tough task. And let it go at that. And know that you're working toward future tasks.
You don't really fall, even as long as you're applying your best effort. The vehicle might fall, but if you're applying the best effort that the vehicle can take, you aren't falling. Do you follow that? If you aren't applying the best effort that your mind has, then that would be doing less than your best. And that's the only thing you can say about it.
What's so hard about this task is being so asleep. Because
That's right.
there's something inside of you. There's something inside of you that you know more, but yet you can't do anything about it. And that's what's so bad. Don't you know what I'm talking about? And you just have to keep on pushing until you awaken enough to know more. But it's something that you can't do anything about. and it's very frustrating. I can remember when we 10 were sitting in the campground before we even knew what you all were about, or were even coming into the picture, or what we were about. And I kept thinking, I can do more than what I'm capable of doing now, and I don't know why I can't make this brain work. That's how I interpreted it, you know. And but now looking back, I can see. But still going through it. But that's true. It's just a process. I never did reach that level. Never have reached that level. And I probably won't until the task is completed. But that's the thing that keeps you going, because it's like a forward motion that helps you to accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Question in a recent tape, we were talking about separating our mind from our vehicle. So you also said that humans will have to separate their mind from their vehicle. I wondered, is it appropriate to talk about that directly?
Well, yes, we said it's okay to talk about it, in that just like you talking vehicle, you know, it wouldn't do that, and it would do them good to think, because their mind is capable of advancing faster than their vehicle, and therefore their mind can begin to make the vehicle attempt to catch up with the mind. Do you follow that? Because the programming is ahead of the performance, and the vehicle is always the tool of the performance, and the programming is the mind, right? So what I have learned is right, but if I have learned that something is right for me, but I have not yet made my vehicle do it, it's in that sense my mind is ahead of my vehicle, because I've received programming that is better than the performance I'm requiring of my vehicle. Do you follow that? So it would be helpful for humans to say, now, vehicle or body. Actually, I wish they'd use vehicle, because they've used body in such wrong ways. It would be better if they used the term vehicle. I think that's why we have you using the term vehicle all the time.
Okay, we've got it.
We got that. Stop. You can add to it or add more things to it.
Okay.
When we talk about, and when you all think about your genes and vehicular malfunction or deficiency, you can apply deficiency and malfunction to a lot of the difficulties that you have with vehicles. But there's some areas that you can't apply too well. In other words, some areas you can't make
you still blame yourself for it instead of blaming the vehicle for it. And in other words, you don't see it in the right way, because if you want to be responsible for your conduct and you still see the vehicle doing things or having thoughts or well, let me start in another direction now. It might be helpful if you thought, a long time ago we used to say that thoughts were deposited in the air, in a sense, when you had them. And Tia and I used to say, remember, we'd go to the grocery store and Tia'd stop and look at something, and then I'd come down the same aisle, and for some reason I'd stop and pick up the same thing. And so we knew that there was something happening in that way. Now, it might be helpful to think of mental things, attitude things, thought things, mental things. I'm just repeating those. Deficiencies that involve emotion, let's say crying, anger, irritability, short-temperedness, impatience, sarcasm, but those, think of them exactly in the same way that you would think of skin blemishes or germs from cold or flu or some other disease apparatus of the vehicle. Now, you can also, if you've really got that around you, if you've been dealing with it, because you are susceptible at the time, because of some deficiency of the vehicle. So we're going to put it on an organic basis. Because we do know that organically the vehicle can be deficient in ways that will cause the vehicle to respond in those attitudes. So it's not just because your grandparents and so forth had emotions that caused you to be sarcastic or to cry easily or to be impatient or to... You see what we're saying? There's also an organic deficiency and a malfunction that causes the vehicle to respond that way. Now, if you travel in that car on the way to retreat, and you, at that moment, or during that travel period, are being attacked by that deficiency in that vehicle, you are as contagious to those others. The germs that you're putting out are as contagious to those others as if you had a bad cold or the flu. You're just as contagious. Now, some have a better mechanism for warding off the flu or the cold when they're with others than others do, depending upon the deficiency of their own vehicle. Do you follow that? So, but some also are very susceptible. They can sit by someone, and the moment that they recognize that that individual has a bad cold, it's almost impossible for them to get it. And because they can't, their vehicle has a weakness in that contagion, being able to be to so easily give into the contagious character of that weakness. You follow that? And the same thing happens in attitudes. We've even come to retreat and had certain ones deal with things regarding attitude, even though you could not see it on their face, and they would not say one thing about it, and yet we would walk away realizing that we had breathed those germs, and that we were having to deal with them in the ways that we must deal with them. So, and that's not saying anything that other than trying to help you understand how that works. So in the same way that we have taught you to protect yourself with every way that you can from obvious things that can be contagious, obvious germs because of poor, poor technique. You've got to learn to have better techniques in dealing with the contagious germs that would be labeled mental attitudes. And know that when you have tried to deal with it and but have not successfully been able to ward it off, that you're still trying to cure yourself of it as quickly as you would if it were a cold. You see what we're saying? And you want to work like crazy, not subjecting another person to it. Now, if I have a temporary disease of irritability, and I let it hang around me, or let's say if it hangs around me, I don't let it. I'm trying to ward it off, but if I'm not completely successful at warding it off, and another vehicle comes along who has that same susceptibility to that contagious genetic character, they will have to deal with it in exactly the same way as if they had the same thing in physical weaknesses, or more obvious physical weaknesses. And we know that these things are true. We know that you could almost reduce every weak characteristic, malfunction, and deficiency of your vehicle to its ailment of improper or insufficient nutrition, or it has had so long of being low in this mineral or this deficiency, the vitamins or whatever it is, that it needs to have constant attention in those areas. And even with that constant attention, it will take it a long time and a lot of effort to be kept under control. Does that make any sense to you all? And you need to know that it's real. And it's something that the society, that medicine and scientists know nothing about. And as you get back to the next level and observe them from a distance, it's not going to be long until they're going to know about it. And they will introduce terminology to describe the physical deficiencies of these ailments that are attitude ailments, and how to treat them. But they don't know how to treat them. The best they can do now is to say, like we have said to you, exercise restraint. Try not to let your vehicle act that way. They don't use the term vehicle, but they say, don't give in to those feelings. But they do not realize how easily someone else might be sitting with them who has that same sensitivity or susceptibility would be triggered by what that individual is carrying with them at that time. That's all I wanted to say, just so you all would think on this a little bit more and get it in proper perspective. Because your vehicle, for some reason or other, you don't blame yourself when your vehicle has a rash. But you blame yourself when your vehicle has a mental rash. And you've got to see it differently. You see what we're saying? Now what you've got to do is do something about that rash. Right? All the procedures that we give you to try to do something about the rash. But you don't take on any guilt because the rash has appeared. You see, as long as you didn't do anything to bring it on. Do you see what we're saying? And we don't think that you go around doing things intentionally to bring on a sarcastic attitude or short temper or something that they come out and you're as surprised as you would if you looked down and saw a rash on your hand. But because of your old programming, you suddenly let shame and guilt just bring you down to zero instead of just recognizing, I've got a rash. I've got a mental rash. I've got an attitude rash. And now I've got to apply the salves available. I've got to apply the things that we can do to keep it under control. And I've also got to know that there are others around me, that this is poison ivy, this is poison oak that I have, this mental attitude, and it's transferable to those who are susceptible to it. And therefore I have to exert that much extra effort to try to protect them from it in the same way we did isolate certain individuals when they have a certain amount of contagion, and we want to do as much technique as we can to prevent it from happening. But it should take the personal guilt out of it. That's tardy for us to think that way. In other words, to think we can just simply, clinically, when those things occur. Okay? Want to add anything? You have guilt and shame.